Well, good morning. Keith Hayes with Mirador Television, direct from the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, East Sussex, and broadcasting, I'm happy to say, to the world. Not just to our local area, but our local area has a lot to offer the world, not least of which is America, because what you see behind me is the rafters of the 15th century coaching inn, the White Hart, where Tom Paine, the man who triggered, according to Bill Bryson, the man who actually triggered the War of Independence and whose signature is on the Declaration of Independence, developed his thoughts about the rights of man. And right across the road, apart from the White Hart, which is called the cradle of American independence, is a pub called the Rights of Man. So you're coming from where it all started with one man, one vote. Not quite, but it wasn't far off. Welcome. The weather this morning is mild again, in fact, almost summery. It's going to nudge 20 degrees. There's a chance of rain late morning, but after that, a very pleasant day with a moderate breeze. Now, I'm always worried about a moderate breeze because that moderate breeze always seems to take my hat and send it flying down the road, and with me in pursuit, yelling to lovely ladies in their shopping bags, "Stop that hat! Stop that hat!" And it's almost like a fox hunt. Everybody, view-aloo, or however. Incidentally, just a side issue is Soho is so named because it was a hunting ground in the old days, the very old days, and they used to go charging across hunting whatever they hunted, saying "Soho, Soho." Anyway, there's a little bit of information from you that you probably didn't know. I'm full of little bits and pieces that don't mean very much. But there you are. You're with me this morning, and it's Friday. We will later on have Melissa Conti on board, I'm happy to say, to get the American viewpoint. And all in all, not a bad day to go searching for the weekend. TGIF. Right, excuse me while I have a sip of coffee. That's what gets me going. And all of this decaf nonsense is a good, strong kick in the morning. That's what you need. Get you going, get you out of bed. Right, okay. Now, we've got some interesting programs as we go through the morning. For those people who are not familiar with Mirador Television is really, it's a potpourri of all sorts of things. We play it by ear. It's live, so we never quite know what's going to happen. We have some little features which are, of course, recorded, but there's always something that you've never seen before. I can guarantee that. That's the way it looks on this particular morning, and we will now take a look at the newspaper headlines after a fraught week in which we started without a prime minister and then ended up with one that seems to be rushing like his predecessor into all sorts of things, but who has gained a bit more confidence from the markets. So we're in a bit better off situation. But the jury is out, and particularly this juryman. Let's give him time, but let's see whether, in fact, he can make something of this situation. As my colleague Stuart Dolby said to me yesterday when we were having a coffee together, we were having a beer actually, but Stuart said Boris was very clever. He surrounded himself with lightweights and second-raters so that there was no threat to his empire. And so that's what we've got. We've got the choice of a lot of second-raters, and that's why all this coming and going and up to do and what to do is always in trouble. We are in trouble. Never mind. Let's put a brave face on it because the weather is rather good as we we'll almost enter into November. Just a quick note that we will be broadcasting Bonfire on November the 5th from about 6 o'clock in the evening till everything ends, which is normally around about 10. Although we may well get one of our kind to go down to one of the bonfire sites and actually report for what it would be considered the aftermath. There you are. My goodness me. That's I've taken 7 minutes of your time telling you all that this morning. So let's turn now to the papers. Giving myself a little bit of elbow room. Right. The Times. The Prime Minister seeks a deal to curb channel crossings. Well, it came out yesterday with reports that the number of people crossing the channel just this year alone are in their thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands. And obviously something has got to be done. The first thing is that the Prime Minister is going to talk to the French. That's like talking to somebody with cloth ears. They are not a bit interested in helping us. They're upset and annoyed that we left the EU, which is their power base, and will not get any cooperation. You can guarantee that. But PM seeks deal to curb channel crossings is the Times headline. And inside, it's about the Prime Minister hoping to strike a new cross-channel deal with France in a bid to reduce numbers of migrants traveling to the UK by boat. The front page also includes a report on a birdsong study that suggests the sounds of larks have a positive effect on people's mental health. There you are. Tweet, tweet. A nice, gentle thing. Actually, it's funny. It's funny that should say, because I was working away here on my own, and suddenly I was aware of a very gentle humming of a lullaby, and I turned around and it was Sally, the owner, co-owner of the hotel, who had come in just to check on the room, the bar, and she was just singing a lullaby to herself. And that hour of the morning, which was about an hour ago, I suppose, it was nice and gentle and sweet. And certainly it worked wonders for my mental health. So perhaps what we should do is we should have a month of humming. Well, mine isn't terribly good for making you feel relaxed, but it could be the others are. Okay, let's carry on. The Sun is Will's not going to Qatar. He's pleading that his diary is full, which is rubbish because we've known about that. I actually had for a couple of days in a class in London a Qatari lady, and she was a most gentle soul, really very nice, compared to, for instance, the Saudi Arabia. There was also one from Saudi Arabia who was just a complete and utter nonsense and loss. The Qatari lady, was very, very nice and quite intelligent and not intrusive at all. So, are we actually stomping around being our usual moral selves, the same as we were with a bit of champagne and a bit of ice cake, and look at the mess we got ourselves into over that? Why we actually always decide we are going to take the moral ground. God, this country it's all very well for some of the wokes to point to the past. The present is bad enough. We do naughty things still. We can be naughty people, and yet we insist upon telling everybody else in the world how dreadful they are and that we won't deal with them because they are so dreadful. Ha! Ha! God, those people in Westminster, they live in such a bubble. And I'm sorry that the royal family is getting pulled in by their nonsense. The Daily Express, join the crusade to save the pension triple lock, is the headline. And the paper says it urges readers to join its campaign to save the pension triple lock. The paper says Mr. Sunak is refusing to commit to giving pensioners the increase they were promised by the Conservative Party at the last election. Well, if he's going to start off breaking promises and pledges like that, we have to really then worry about the next 2 years. Because if he can do it in his first week, I wouldn't trust him further than I can throw him. And anything he says from now on. And anyway, I've always said this man is a man of smoke and mirrors. We followed his first two budgets very carefully. And he was great at robbing Peter to pay Paul, and then saying that the government had chunked in all sorts of new money. Ha, yes. So if you see me as a cynic about our new leader, so be it. I am a cynic. Let's check in, say, a month's time and see where the wind is blowing and whether I'm blowing in the opposite direction or whether, in fact, I've created a little wind in the right direction. The Mirror. Ghislaine Maxwell is enjoying a jog in the sun. That's to Ghislaine Maxwell, who is serving a paedophile and sex charges in the States and is in prison. But anyway, she's enjoying a jog in the sun. Presumably, she's in an open prison. I must say that she doesn't look the socialite that she was billed as before this all happened. The Daily Telegraph. The Prime Minister plans to expand a windfall tax grab. And that tax grab is on the banks. Well, both on energy firms and also I read somewhere that he's got an eye on the banks, and the banks I most certainly approve of. They are they're almost an impregnable situation. PMs and MPs alike are scared silly of the bankers because of the power they wield with their cash. And as a consequence, if any sector has let down the community and does not do anything to try to make life easier and more sensible for those people who are ordinary folk, it's the banks. They keep on shutting even ATMs. They remove bank branches. They try hard to make you deal with just the computer. They need their legs cutting off. That's what they need. But instead, everybody bows obeisance to them. Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. Well, if Sunak has got the guts to actually put an attack on them, because last year, Lloyd's made £8 billion profit. 8 billion. You could spare half of that, and they've still got plenty of money to expand with. So the Telegraph reports that Sunak is planning to expand the windfall tax on energy firms. He tries to raise billions of pounds to fill a massive fiscal black hole. The paper says insiders are warning that the NHS backlog could continue to rise past 2024 as the Prime Minister and Chancellor Jeremy Hunt prepare spending plans. Well, there you are, still a question of budgets and so on. We will never get away from it because that's the core of any society now, is its fiscal situation. The Daily Mail. Royals dreading Harry's raw and unflinching book. So the royal family are expecting new bitter revelations from Prince Harry when he unveils his new memoirs. The paper also features an image of then Prince Charles and socialite James Stunt. Well, he's such a socialite. I don't recognize the name. The Guardian. There we go. Let's see what The Guardian has to say. No way back, it says. And basically, what it's on about is Shell reports a round of bumper profits. The UN has found that there is no credible way to keep to the 1.5 degrees temperature target rise. The paper also reports that Home Secretary Suella Braverman is facing fresh questions about alleged security breaches. Sources have told the Guardian that Miss Braverman Oh, let's see. The paper reports that Home Secretary Suella Braverman is facing fresh questions about alleged security breaches. Aha, there we go. The Eye. Sunak poll gives Tories election hope. Oh, the Eye is saying that a new poll has found that Mr. Sunak is level with Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer as preferred leader of the country. The paper says Mr. Starmer is more popular with voters than former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, but elsewhere on the front page, the paper features an analysis of Prince Harry's new memoir. I don't give a fig, a tuppence for polls. They may be a vague indicator, but they certainly do not pinpoint what's happening in our society and what is happening in our community. The Financial Times, a brutal week for big tech as investors knocked $550 billion off market valuations. That is dollars. That's in the States, by the way. But the high tech sector, which has been the darling of investors for so long, has taken a turn for the worse. And there's all sorts of activity with the stocks. The paper says, the Financial Times, that value has been knocked off, and it ends a surge of growth that U.S. tech giants experienced during the pandemic. Daily Star, boffins reveal picking nose. Oh, I really, this one is. I'm not going to read this one. If you want to see it in the Star, by all means do. I find it distasteful. Right. Let's. It's 8:48. Let's just take a little breather, and we'll go down to our favourite spot, our Potter's Wheel, the park. Southover Grange Park. Well done, the energy companies. They're full of bright ideas to help their customers. Now they've made power so expensive that for an average house such as this, you can't afford to heat it. So you don't need appliances such as this. But that means you also don't need a fridge, because you can keep your groceries cool and fresh without it. The house is cold enough. Well done, chaps. That's our little sting in the tail. Now, just looking at if there's anything of great import locally, it's today's highlights from the news agencies that appear on the internet. Is pictures show work progressing on the new state-of-the-art health centre. But where is it? Well, let's find out. Wade through all these silly nonsense things that are meant to protect it. The pictures show work is underway on the new health centre in Worthing. Right, that's in Worthing. So your new health centre is going ahead. People in Worthing, which is good for you. Dear. I just like. I just like the way that they do these things in the local news. But I mean, it's not earth-shattering, is it? Not earth-shattering at all. But I think that we'll not go further on that. And what we will do now is we'll give you the time first of all. That it's 8:52, and it's the 28th of October. 2022. It's a Friday. Thank God it's a Friday. And we will all gather our skirts to make sure that we enjoy the weekend, because it's going to be quite warm. It's going to stay, hover around 19 or 20, and that's very good. That's summertime weather. And here it is, just coming up to the beginning of November. October has been quite delightful in many respects indeed. So I've got a couple of things this morning that I'm going to offer to you to have a look at, and let's take a look and see what. Now, going through the archives, I came across just a little background to Keir Street, which is one of the steepest streets in the country, and it is on on the very edge of the town, and it's a street that is very cobbled and very steep, and lockdown obviously changed a lot in our lives, in our businesses, and so on and so forth. But one of the very talented young ladies that we had on Mirador for a while was Annie Verrill. And Annie and I sparred every morning, and people would stop us and say, do you two really hate one another, or is it all an act? And to be quite honest with you, neither of us knew then, and I don't think either of us know now. But here is a little bit of example of how we actually punished one another first thing in the morning, but also put out informative programs, and it was let's see, it was well, we think it's worthwhile taking a look. Here we go with Keir Street and Annie Verrill.
Good morning. What a wonderful day. I'm having a good day. However, ask this one. I wonder what his feels. Are you okay?
You're having a good day. You drag me up and down these streets, steepest street in Britain, some people say. Why did you want to come down here?
Your doctor said you need exercise. Walking, remember, walking.
Look at that.
Not just being carried around in a car all the time. Annie, can we go here? Annie, can we do that? Oh, Annie, please, could you take me to the post office? Oh, Annie, please, blah, blah, blah. Chop, chop. You've got 5 more rounds up and down.
Oh, is that before breakfast?
Why not?
You slave driver.
Earn your breakfast.
No. I know you. You've got a satanic streak in you. You really. Oh yes, you like beating me around the ears, don't you?
Well, you can always look for a different partner.
After you just hauled me to the altar. Anyway.
Carry on dreaming.
Oh, dream. Nightmare, if you ask me. Put up with that day in, day out. Well, I have to anyway, but...
His choice, not mine.
Now, Keir Street, pretty famous for 2 or 3 things, actually. But the most famous...
Coach and 4 horses.
That's right.
I know that, mister.
Okay.
Okay.
Tell them about the Coach and 4 horses.
Oh. No. I am not a storyteller.
Oh, is that right?
That's your job.
The way you nag me, I would say that you're a real storyteller.
Don't confuse the two. Nagging is one thing.
Right, well, this is a very famous street because the Prince Regent, somewhere around the turn of the century, of 1700 going into 1800, took up a bet that he could drive a coach and four down this street, which he did.
Yes.
And he managed it without breaking his neck. Mm-hmm. If he'd have broken his neck, English history would have been very different.
That's correct.
But the other thing is that the man who actually was involved in his little gambling set, as it were, lived just around the corner here, Baron John Larday. And he was a real character too. I mean, one of the things that I really like about him is he was married to a lady who was the former mistress of a highwayman.
Uh-huh.
Ooh, yeah.
Of course you would know that story.
Well, we're back to oysters.
Well, I guess so. There's a lady as well as a mistress in the story. You must remember that.
But her erstwhile lover, the highwayman, was actually hanged at Tyburn. They strung him by the neck, and he was no more than about 30, so he had a very short life.
You must have had too many oysters.
He probably did, because it was said that he charmed the ladies even as he went to the gallows.
Oh, God.
Oh, feminism rampant, feminism rampant. Well, you will get me on these topics.
I'm not listening.
Well, the next thing is we got to talk about nudity, because John Larday...
Excuse you?
Oh,
This is a morning program, you know.
Me. Oh, dear, 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 dear.
How about I just walk away and you talk about it all by yourself?
Well, I'd like you to listen.
No.
You might learn a couple of things. John Larday bet Lord Cholmondeley that he could carry him, John Larday incidentally being of small stature, that he could carry him around Old Stein in Brighton on his back, piggyback. And when they turned up, Larday said to Cholmondeley, "Okay, here, I'm ready to go, take your clothes off, strip." And Cholmondeley said, "What the hell are you talking about?" And he said, "The bet was that I could carry you on my back, piggyback, around this area. Nothing about you able to wear your clothes, which adds weight." His Lordship, the friend of the Prince Regent, won the bet. You can come back now, the dirty stuff is over.
This is safe.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because now we'll talk about mistresses. At the bottom of this street
I'm not interested.
that you were looking at the other day is Southover Grange.
Yes.
And the Prince Regent, in his later years, after he'd given up driving coaches and four down here, he took his mistress and stayed the night there. They gave him the key to the back door.
You mentioned that last week.
I
You're
know.
now boring people.
I'm not.
You showed me the key.
Now you can see why he was such a daredevil. Right?
Indeed.
Yes. Actually, yeah, you taken that key back?
It's in a safe. It's best if you don't have it.
Anyway, I think what we should do is we should organise an egg rolling competition down here at Easter, and that would be wonderful because we could take our eggs, boiled or fried, we could take our eggs and roll them down here and see who is the victor.
How do you roll down fried eggs?
I don't know, but how are you going to carry me around on your back? Till tomorrow, well, you should be less feisty, I'm sure. Say goodbye to the people.
I'm waiting for you.
Oh, toodle pip.
Goodbye.
Well, a very talented broadcaster, Annie Verrill, and I have no idea where she is now. As television is a very temporal thing, as people move on and move up. But I do hope that her talent isn't wasted, because she certainly was a breath of fresh air on this program. And did we dislike one another intensely, or was it all an act? Nobody will ever know. Well, they won't know from me, and I don't think they'll know from her. So it'll remain a state secret. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. Well, now it is time for us to, I think, take another one of our breaks. Let's see. Actually, there's no reason why we couldn't take a different break for a change. And let's, yes, this is Mirador. Well, there you are. That was from the air. Our jolly little town here in East Sussex, the county town of the county, and the giver of the name to Lewis, Delaware. And I actually keep an eye on what's happening in Delaware. I'm on one of their Facebook things that I can just tap in and out, and a very vital community it seems to be in Delaware, and quite a few places that are named after here. And Wilmington is one of them. And while our Wilmington is a tiny little village now, the Wilmington, Delaware is a thriving metropolis. And it's got a hotel there. And I'll try and dig out the clip because Melissa Conti went to visit the hotel because they do in great style an English afternoon tea. So if you really want to have a sample of an English afternoon tea, go across the pond to Wilmington, Delaware, and taste it. Oh, and it is done with great protocol. It really is quite superb, and we're very fortunate to hit them on an afternoon when they had some of the ladies who lead some of the ladies who go there for their afternoon tea, cucumber sandwiches, and cakes. And I must confess, I am very lucky because I sampled just the last of colonialism, if you like. I went to Canada in 1958, And in Victoria, the capital of British Columbia, was a hotel called the Empress Hotel. And one of the features of the hotel was that an afternoon at 4 o'clock each afternoon, the ladies would gather, or you could gather too, to have afternoon tea, cucumber sandwiches, and a pot of tea and some fancy cakes to the music of, wait for it, Billy Tickle and his orchestra. Could you get anything finer than Billy Tickle and his orchestra? No, indeed, you could not. So I'm glad that they carry on that tradition in Delaware, in the United States, but also that it was not uncommon across the North American continent. Now, I'm going to show you this because there are two gentlemen there that are good friends of mine and whom I admire for their various abilities and contributions to this town. One is John Agar, an internationally recognized poet, whom you will see around the town. And the other is Stephen Catlin, who is just recently mayor. He just ended his term of office a couple of months ago. But Stephen really took the town by the scruff of the neck after lockdown and got it going again. And the very fine mayor was he, as they say. He is still a councillor, and he still makes quite a contribution. But this is Stephen Catlin. Our program was called Catlin's Corner, and he uncovered all sorts of little bits and pieces. But unfortunately, Stephen is not at all well at the moment and is lined up for an operation, and that's why he's not as much in evidence. However, what happened was that John Agar wrote a poem for Stephen in this magazine, which comes through your doorstep, doorknob or door whatever, your front door, the Louisian, and this poem. And I'm going to read it to you because we've got all the time in the world, as Louis Armstrong said, all the time in the world, just for love, just for love. So here we go for Stephen Catlin. A moustache-whiskered, bald pate, gleaming with arm. I'm not doing this. A gleaming man, armed at this moment with a watering can, crosses and recrosses Friar's Walk, a small town street, southeast England. Consider his simple ritual unsung. There's something, let's say, slightly monkish in the man and his mild-mannered demeanor, despite the small cigar cleaving to his lips. There he goes again, a former mayor who wouldn't call himself a florist. Once the town's still-standing tobacconist, whose shelves, stocked high with fragrant baccy, overlooked a counter of rainbow-colored sweets, an Aladdin's treasure to the school children, tempting nimble hands and skedaddled feet. His little shop, now a long-gone landmark, he finds another pathway to the heart. Trekking back and forth across Friar's Walk, that watering can at his side, his silent ally, turned into how even the best blooms die. For though they speak not a word of Yiddish, flowers know what it means to be broken by some boot indifferent to the fragile, and flowers, with not a word spoken, seem to know what's meant by exile. But thanks to this man's loyal ablution, they survive in a raised red brick roadside bed. This man, rooted in German-Jewish kin, yet bearing the fruit of a Welsh name, Catlin, pouring sacramental water to green kindred. Now, I read that very, very badly, and I'm sorry, John, but actually it's partly the light, is I couldn't see all of it, the way it's laid out in the magazine. But if you want to read it yourself, it's this October copy of the Louisian. Now, just a little explanation of that, because Stephen Catlin, to those people who are new to Lewis, is a very, very well-known character, and at one time had a sweet shop, one of those good old-fashioned sweet shops, which my late wife, a Canadian, loved, because she liked going in and saying, "Can I have a quarter of this and a quarter of that?" His sweets were all in bottles, and he poured them out into a weighing machine, so that you took away in a bag a quarter of sweets, either mixed or of all of one sort. And that shop was iconic. Forced out of business once again by landlords who wanted too much rent. I don't know why we don't sort out these landlords, but there we don't. And Stephen then went into politics and became a district councillor and a town councillor. And he stuck to his principles and was an independent. He didn't get suborned by any political party, and he spoke his mind. Independents have a very, very tough row to hoe. While money is poured by the parties into campaigns, election campaigns, the poor independent has to find the money themselves. But Stephen was of such stature that he strode the streets, and he was elected up until the last election, when the parties actually targeted the independents, and he and one other independent fell at the last hurdle, as it were, and he ceased to be a district councillor. But he remained a town councillor and became mayor last year, and has just finished his stint in that capacity. But one of the things that he does, and this is the reference in the poem to a watering can, is that Stephen looks after the little gardens that are unheralded around the town, but who are under the control of the town, but nobody really does much with them. For instance, those people who go to Fuego will be familiar with the little flowering pot-planted brick things. He looks after those. He created the hidden garden right next door to All Saints, or between All Saints and the House of Friendship. And he looks after some plots on Western Road, and he does all this himself. And just wanted to help us now and again, but he looks after all this himself. He is the gardener of the town, to try and help keep it pretty. And nobody really pays much attention. As John Agar says, that some of these flowers are crushed under heel because people do not value either the flowers themselves or the effort and the love and the care that is put into it by Stephen Catlin in making sure that these plots aren't unsightly, but are beautiful little plots of here and there of lovely flowers. So there they are again, John Agar, international award-winning poet, and Stephen Catlin, who is a former mayor and gardener to the town, let's say. Gardener to the town. Well, let's take a trip down to the park just for a minute, catch our breath after that. Well, there we are. It's just a little something, as it were. Right. Okay. It is now 17 minutes past 9. And the news this morning is mixed. There's no great drama attached to it this morning, except that uh, the well, the royals are worried about Harry's new book, which is due to be launched in the new year. And the Express is calling for protection to triple lock. And quite rightly, it said that the triple lock pledge was put into the manifesto. If Rishi Sunak breaks that pledge, no matter whether you think it's right or wrong that pensioners should get a triple lock increase. A triple lock, by the way, is that whichever is the highest sets the rate of increase, and that is from inflation, cost of living, and one other. Anyway, there is a third measure for us all. Where are we going? I really. Oh yes. I was saying that the Express has called on its readers and on the general public to get onto Sunak's back and say protect this, because the Conservative Party pledged it prior to the next election. It was an election promise. And although election promises are regularly broken, this one is one that is in their manifesto. And that really is the guiding Bible for them during their period in office. So if Sunak is going to break this, then he will be seen as a totally untrustworthy prime minister. I'm not so sure about him anyway, but nonetheless, he's getting a bit of support at the moment. So give the man a chance. Perfectly happy to give the man a chance. But if you go around breaking serious pledges like that, then there is nothing but suspicion and disquiet that one shows to a man who can do that sort of thing, because what else can he tamper with and not worry about the pledges of the Tory party? Having said that, one paper says that in the polls, he is now up with Keir Starmer. Not sure whether that says a lot, but in other words, he is beginning to win back a certain amount of support. That can soon dissipate, Mr. Sunak, soon dissipate. And I already notice an air of arrogance in you as you ponce around. And that is the problem with our Houses of Parliament. They are arrogant beyond belief. And really, if we want to know who sets the standard for the me generation, it's that 650 useless lots of people sitting in glory in Westminster. I love having that rant. I really do. Anyway, this is we'll take a look at the innards of the paper for some of the less noticeable news in a moment or two. But what we will do is we'll play a little program, I think, and this is a compilation which was a part of our United States service when we had it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it, and there are 5 or 6 programs in this, and I will come out of it at a suitable moment. But there are 1 or 2 things. What we've got in our archives is quite remarkable, and there's a couple of programs. So let's take a look, shall we? Let's take a look.
a mix of emotion, got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully, appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist.
Paul Miles is the authority on Tom Paine, not just in Lewes, but throughout the English-speaking world. What he doesn't know about Tom is not worth knowing. But he does have other little tidbits tucked away as well.
The book I spent 10 years intermittently, it's intermittent research this, I was doing other things at the same time, but I couldn't let it go after I was made director of the Tom Paine Festival in 2009, celebrating 200 years of his life. It was 200th anniversary of his death actually, but everyone wanted to do something in Lewes about that because he lived here for 6 years. And so I was appointed as festival director, and it was my duty to mount a 10-day exhibition of his time, celebrating his time in Lewes. So it was quite a difficult thing to do actually, because up until that point, very little was known about his time in Lewes. In fact, it turns out very little was known about his time in England before he left these shores from Lewes in 1774. He departs. He arrives in Lewes in 1768 to the shores of America, clutching a letter of introduction from the great Benjamin Franklin. So we did find out some things, and we wrote a little book, co-authored, I published, edited and co-authored with Dr. Colin Brent and Deborah Gage, who's a direct descendant of Sir Thomas Gage, who was Commander-in-Chief at the time the British lost America to the War of Independence, as it were. So three points of view. Colin deep in as much as it was known then about this. He's very the local eminent historian. Me, just come off a degree in psychology, so I had an inquiring mind. I was trained at the time to inquire, if you like, in a forensic way. And Deborah, who writes a very good essay about her ancestor, and it's included in the book. So, but there was a missing bit. Was Paine wrote the case of the officers of excise while he was here, and 4,000 copies were printed of that. And all the accounts were that he was rabble-roused by members, other officers. He was an officer of excise here, and he was rabble-roused to do this thing. But a member of the Thomas Paine Society, just deceased, had written a little book some years before about this, where he claimed Paine couldn't possibly have done that, actually. He probably couldn't do it now. Get the signatures of 3,000 officers of excise on a petition and write this case, which is the argument to laying out the corruption within the excise service and the way their wages have been frozen for 100 years by law, and they observed the inflation, the rise of money in the country, like a map of Peru, Paine says. So anyway, the signatures were missing, and I started working with the university on this, and we digitised the local newspaper, and I used to take students under my wing and go to the National Archives and fish around in the treasury boxes with uncatalogued material. And I found some signatures. I found 2 lots of signatures from officers, predating Paine's writing of the case by 4 years. And so there were clues were starting to, this was a very important clue, clues were starting to emerge, but it was quite difficult to put it all together. And I had to put it to one side for, because I couldn't quite see the picture. And it was only actually when I gave up the doctoral study, because that didn't seem to be getting me there. It was too wide a thing. I wanted to do this specific thing, how did this happen? And it was only actually by writing it the story came together in my mind. The clues started to click together. The logic started to make sense. And I checked it out with Bill Speck, probably the senior radical historian at that time, sadly deceased, lost poor Bill, and Professor Richard Whatman of the University of St Andrews, who's taken on that mantle of the most senior radical historian in the UK and up their ranking in the world. So they checked my work as I went, and signed it off, as it were, as a valid piece of writing. And I published under the Thomas Paine Society last year, and it's been out there, available for sale all over the world now. I've given several talks here and there: London, Benjamin Franklin's house; Thetford, his hometown; here in the Keep, here in the town. Historical Society is slowly getting out there, but I just got a review in by Jet Connor of the Journal of the American Revolution, where he marks it 9 out of 10, and marks it as filling in that missing bit, or some of that missing bit. Very hard to find these clues, and Richard Whatmore said it described the rise of Thomas Paine, because that was the research question, really. How could someone very ordinary, in 6 short years that he was living in Lewes, come from here as a lowly officer of excise, and just 6.5 years later, he wrote Common Sense, or was jockeying up to write that, which changed the world and caused, almost directly, gave the North American colonists the confidence to go to war.
Hello, I'm Rosie. Shakespeare's very first book is up for sale. It is one of the most important in literary history. It will be auctioned in New York in April by Christie's. But first, Christie's had it on show in London, and they invited me to go and take a look and shoot a video.
Well, the first folio is of particular importance because it actually preserves for posterity 18 of the plays that we would not otherwise have were it not for the publication of the first folio. So it contains 36 plays, and that's essentially his entire output. It's been very well looked after, and we know it has had a fairly stable environment. We know the owner at the beginning of the 19th century, a John Fuller of Devonshire Place, and we assume he kept it in his family for some time, and then it changed hands a few times in the course of the 20th century, but since 1977 it's been at Mills College. We do anticipate interest from both private buyers, private collectors, and institutions. There are parts of the world where there are no copies, and so we would expect there might even be institutional interest from those quarters. But of course it is the crowning glory for any collection, not just book collection, so there will be bibliophiles who would really very much like to have to add to their collections as the crowning glory.
So no pages missing?
It is a complete copy, and that's one of its distinguishing characteristics. One of the other really fun things about this particular copy is that it was chosen for the Festival of Great Britain exhibition in 1951. It was just a few years after the end of World War II, really to lift the national spirit. And so one of the major exhibitions was a book exhibition that was held at the V&A, and this was the copy that was chosen to represent Shakespeare in the first folio. And so it has its bookplate from that exhibition, the Festival of Britain Exhibition of Books 1951, and it was exhibit 318. I have showed it to representatives of the Globe Theatre, and also Christie's has invited an actor to come and read from it, and this will be on Christie's website soon.
Well, our dear friend Rosie Hayes, who dug up all sorts of things for us, and still does. She has YN UK news agency in South London, and she comes across some very interesting little snippets. Quite a lady, ex-ITN, ex-Russia Today, was one of the first journalists into Cuba when Castro took over. Quite a lady, our Rosie, and it's always good to see her on the screen. Now, a couple of things that I noted as I was looking at the papers, inside the paper, and perhaps the one thing that people now here would like to know is that Lloyd's, which is the Lloyd's Bank, a bank that I don't particularly care for, but still I have to deal with them, is that warns that house prices could crash by up to 18% next year. And the bank is cashing in on higher rates. House prices are set to slide for the next 2 years as higher mortgage rates bite. This warning has come from Lloyd's Bank. After pandemic lockdown fueled red-hot activity in the property market, Lloyd's is now expecting house prices to fall by 7.9% in 2023, and 0.5% in 2024, before picking up again in 2025. So if you're thinking of selling your house or buying a new one or whatever, that would be something that you would want to take stock of. Now, the idea that Rishi Sunak is going to improve or increase the windfall tax on energy companies, you might not have too much sympathy for Shell, who are putting out the rewards to investors as profits rocket to £8.2 billion. It's second highest ever quarterly profit. Now, that's a quarter. £8.2 billion in a quarter. So any windfall taxes, while I am naturally against taxation, is those really are figures that we have to pay attention to. Unilever hits shoppers with big price hikes. With things like Marmite and Dove cleaner and Lynx underarm deodorant, things of that sort that Unilever produce and distribute and sell. And they are pumping up the prices, I'm afraid. So it's going to be more expensive for us in the... Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm fine.
Very nice to see you.
Thank
Are you
you.
from Lewis?
No.
Where are you from?
Cranbourne
Cranbourne.
in Dorset.
Aha. And what are you doing up here?
Singing.
Oh, are you? Can you sing for us now? We're on live on television. Yes. Come and say hello. Yes. Come and tell us about yourself. This is why we're in this hotel, so we can see people who come in. Come and tell us about who you are and what you're doing. How wonderful to see you. There we go. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Sue Shule. I come from Cranbourne in Dorset. Oh, is he looking for me?
He'll find you.
Yes, I'm here to sing with Jeremy, who's an old friend.
And where are you singing?
We will be singing, we're singing in the Linklater Pavilion.
Oh, yes. Very nice pavilion.
Yes. Yes.
And
But we're doing
sort of...
a concert at Berwick Church on Sunday.
Oh, that's a beautiful church.
Is it?
Yes, it is. It has murals from the Second World War.
Oh,
yes.
right.
Yes,
Right.
It is a lovely little church indeed. In fact,
Yeah.
one church warden was a friend of mine at one stage, so
Right.
we used to go there regularly. And what sort of music do you sing?
Well, there's songs that Jeremy has written.
Right, so the originals.
Yes. They are.
But how would you classify them? Madrigal or popular or?
I don't know, really. Very, very lyrical, anyway.
Right.
And four parts.
When are you at the Linklater Pavilion?
In about 10 minutes.
Oh, right.
hopefully.
So this morning.
Yeah.
So anybody who wants to go, get
Yeah.
down to the Linklater.
Yeah.
And when are you at Berwick Church?
On Sunday afternoon.
Right. Okay.
about
Sunday
2
afternoon.
o'clock.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful trip out there. Those people who do not know Berwick Church, it's a beautiful little church. It's worth going out. And since it's a concert
Yes. Yes.
from Pete, everybody from Dorset or just you?
No, I think just me, probably. Right, I better go and find them because they'll be waiting.
It
for
was
me
nice
to
of you to
take
spend
them.
some time with us.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where's the reception?
Right, if you go out through the door there, turn left, and it's just 3 miles down the road.
Thank you.
That's lovely. That's what makes it all worthwhile being in here, being able to chat to people who are coming through. So there you are. Two concerts. One this morning in the Linklater Pavilion, which is down in the wetlands in Lewis. Yeah, fairly easy to get to. Yeah, fairly easy to get to. And then again at Berwick Church. And if you don't know Berwick Church, you should know Berwick Church. It is a lovely, lovely, lovely church. Well worthwhile visiting. And so there's a concert there this morning. And there I can see the gentleman going out with the lady that we've just spoken to. So it's going to be rather jolly, I would think. Right, okay. I was in the middle of giving you the warning about houses, but also shoppers with big price hikes. And it's funny that the Marmite, because we have often said about Mirador television is we're like Marmite. You either love it or hate it, but you never forget it. And strangely enough, the very first painting on our painting show, our art show with Sarah Fitch Hayes, is her rendition of a Marmite jar. So Marmite has been very much part of our culture here. And now the price is going to rise, so people will stop buying it. Oh, dearie me. Disaster. Absolute disaster. The other thing that crossed my mind, if I can just find it quickly, is that bumblebees have a ball by playing with toys. It may look like they are just bumbling around, but bees have shown they might be more intelligent than previously thought. There you go. As researcher suggests, they can play with toys. Scientists at Queen Mary University of London set up cameras around a miniature arena to film bumblebees and how they would interact with small wooden balls. And footage shows the bees went out of their way to roll the balls repeatedly, despite there being no apparent incentive for doing so. So there you are, bumblebees. They play a sort of a football. Why not? Why not? And the other item that caught my mind is feeling chirpy. Feeling chirpy, says the headline. Maybe you've listened to a bird song, because if you're feeling chirpy, it could be thanks to our feathered friends. Seeing or hearing birds has been linked to an improvement in mental well-being, lasting up to 8 hours. Researchers used a smartphone app to collect reports of mental well-being alongside reports of seeing or hearing birdsong. And the Urban Mind app asked particular participants 3 times a day if they could see or hear birds, with questions on well-being to test if there was an association between the two and how long it lasted. And the study revealed hearing or seeing birds was associated with improved well-being for healthy people and those with depression. So there you are, the birds and the bees, and they are good for us, and we must save them because both are under threat in many respects, some from pesticides, some from. I see that a foreign type of hornet has managed to invade our shores, and it attacks all insects, including bees. So there are things that we need to do, and we need to support those who do these things with the birds and the bees, because it affects our well-being, our mental health. So there you are. There you are indeed. Right. Okay. Let's go to the park. There's another little tail twister, the Lewis Consul, which we put out from time to time just to remind people and to remind our leaders that this is a democracy, and we expect them to observe some semblance of that state when they are playing around with various things in our backyard, in our town, in our district, and those areas for which they have responsibility. It is a democracy, and you remember that because you behave in a very, very autocratic way in many respects, not least of which when it comes to mental health. When we keep on hearing from the king-elect down through various strata of society, how important it is for us to be cognizant of mental strain and mental health, is our own people here deal in a very high-handed way with those who are mentally stressed. Yes, they do. I'm sorry that it is true. In a very, very high-handed way. Anyway, we also need to keep an eye on the bonfire societies who are preparing themselves for the big day, a week tomorrow, Saturday, November the 5th, when this town goes buck mad. And that from morning, well, they let off a maroon from the castle at 6 a.m. in the morning. And then from then on, all sorts of things happen throughout the day with the members of various bonfire societies in their striped jerseys striding the streets and preparing for the evening's festivities, which are parades of no mean stature, I may say, culminating in somewhere around 7:30, 8 o'clock, a grand parade of all 6 bonfire societies, plus some of the smaller ones from outside Lewis, parading for probably well over an hour, in fact, probably closer to 2, with their blazing crosses, their fireworks going off all the time, their effigies, and every member strutting his stuff. It is a sight to behold, and I'm happy to say that you can. There are going to be several ways of staying in touch. If you're housebound, you don't want to go out into the crowds, you're overseas, you're an old Louisian who can't bear to be away from bonfire, we will be broadcasting live from about 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock or whenever festivities end. And so will radio Rocket Radio. It will also be broadcasting, but not as a radio station, but as a small streaming TV enterprise, TV channel. So you've got a choice between us and them. And it is such an important night. Is most certainly not going to hide the fact that they are a competition, but nonetheless, they are going to do a distributing job of pictures of Bonfire Night. So that's very much in the works, and we are busy preparing for that and other things throughout this last quarter of the year, the winter quarter, which so far is not showing any signs outside of being winterish. It would be funny, wouldn't it, if we went through an entire year with temperatures that never dipped below 20 degrees. Oh, heavens to Betsy. Heavens to Betsy. It would be an oddity. It would indeed. Right, we've sent out our invitation to Melissa, so hopefully she'll be joining us in a little while. But let's see what we have in the video file. Perhaps what I'll do is I will play. I think we got it. I Like Lewis. We play it fairly frequently, but it does remind everybody what this town is about. So sit back just for a minute or two while we are waiting for our next guests, next correspondence from the camera of Mirador Television. I Like Lewis. Here we go. Oh, just lovely, just absolutely lovely. And we that man has been laughing with us for 5 years, and some people say they cackle, but he's part of us. We just love him, and in fact, he's generally twisted into all sorts of shapes. Right, you are watching Mirador Television. It is now 9:56, just nudging 10 o'clock. And so far, not a spot of rain. There is a chance that it is going to rain sort of around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock or so, because of the type of weather that we've got. But it is warm. The temperature is hitting 20 degrees again, which is ridiculous for basically the end of October and the beginning of September. Beginning of November, that we should have these sort of temperatures, and it is quite warm. But is it totally good? Who knows? Climate change is a very controversial topic, and there is much that is not known about it. We know far more than we used to, but we still are not sure about the effects of various things. And we keep on trying to find out. We are Mirador Television. Mirador Television is the television service that emanates from Lewes in East Sussex. I say emanates because we are not a parochial local television station. We look at things from around the world and issues that are international. But what we try to do is to look at how international and national affairs will affect a small town such as this. So no, we don't go looking for lost dogs. And I don't say that lightly, because it is very important if you lose a dog. But there are radio services and internet services and so on that do that sort of thing. And there's no sense in us either replicating it or, for that matter, not using our precious time and resources to doing something that's slightly different and slightly worthwhile. For Mirador Television, and the time is 9:58. The date is the 28th of October, and the year is 2022. And only 2 months left in this year. Can it deliver any more surprises? Because just about every month has been fraught with some sort of crisis right throughout the year. And though we very rapidly forget some of these things, they will be reminded. We will be reminded as people start to look back, and particularly as many of the things that happened this year will actually ripple on into the years to come, and people will be saying that damn 2022. But there you are. That's who we are, where we are, and so on. And we have actually our little television operation up in the window of the White Hart Hotel, from which we broadcast. And already people are beginning to take a little peek in. So we are not doing too badly in that stakes either. All right. We will expect Melissa shortly. In the meantime, what we let's hey, what have we got that? Well, I don't want to go to the park again. Well, there you are. That's a reminder of who we are, and where you are and who you're watching. And we would appreciate it if you do watch, and if you do like even a little bit of what you see, is that you tell other people about us. It's the only way with the internet to get watched and to be seen is that somebody says, "Hey, have you seen? Hey, have you seen a little bird in the wind?" or whatever. No, I hadn't better sing. I hadn't better start singing. We don't want to frighten everybody away. Not everybody, anyway. And we will. I think probably. Well, I know what we could do. We could actually take a look at the program stream that we had, and which we cut off because although there are a number of programs there, it's rather long. But let's open it up again, and if you'll don't mind us playing around, we'll try and find the pickup point again. There we go.
September we met, I could tell by your smile. You hadn't been with a good girl like me in a while. Yeah, you were impressed, couldn't leave me alone. Text me every time that you pick up the phone. And I had control in the driver's seat, but my hands are slipping off the wheel. Now the tables have turned, now I'm up all night. I'm picturing you acting like a fool. I'm on the other side, you're like a full moon, and I'm up all night, howling at you.
Stephen Catlin knows Lewis the best, and he's mayor-elect for Lewis. But he does have a softer side when it comes to keeping Lewis beautiful.
here we are at what was Pinwell Lane. It ran up through here to the top of the High Street. It became closed off some years ago, and this land is now called Manorial Waste. And we have to thank Every, the great Lewis ironmaster, for bringing the gateway from the Grey Friars Franciscan Priory here. This is the only bit that remains. The Premier Inn is now on the site and had been a railway station before. This is the much vaunted secret garden. Until just a few years ago, it was covered in weeds, brambles, and goodness knows what else. I suggested to the friends of Lewis that it would be better, considering its location behind this ancient gateway, if we could cultivate it a bit. And aided by Jane Tyra and Gillian Ross, I've managed to turn it into this. I'm somewhat embarrassed to say a lot of people keep coming to take photos of it. And I can see there's an overturned pot I must rescue. But here we are. This is one of the better examples of the fruits of my labours. And I hope it gives you pleasure. Thank you. Good evening. I've picked up something this afternoon that concerns Lewes District Council. I'm given to understand that there is yet another reorganisation taking place, involving perhaps 17 staff having to reapply for their own jobs. This doesn't bode at all well for local government. In fact, an officer said to me on the way home that it's all going to be really Eastbourne controlled. That doesn't bode well, considering that Lewes District is primarily a rural area, and Lewes, I beg your pardon, and Eastbourne Borough Council is 4 square miles of urbanism. Quo vadis, one could ask, but I'm not sure. The person one asks will know. I'll give you more when I hear it, but another reorganisation so soon, axing more staff, leaves one wondering quite how things are going to pan out. It's all falling apart, and really, Lewes District Council should have its own chief executive. We are so different from Eastbourne. It needs a different understanding than presently exists. But of course, local government merely reflects what is going on at central government. We would all like to wash our hands of that. Thanks.
Unmute the mic. That's your friend, Melissa Conti, who has just joined us from New York. and you were pleased to know that the steward is prowling around somewhere. He's like a blue-arsed fly. To try and get him to sit down in front of the camera straight away is almost impossible. You just have to put up with him. How are you, Melissa?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Now, I have some news about you just saw your soulmate, Stephen Catlin, and that was from a couple of years ago, but we're just playing some stuff. And here is Stuart.
Thank you for your very nice greeting and
coming in.
introduction. Thank you very much.
Sit down
No,
and behave
So-
yourself.
no, do not tell me what to do. You flipping bully.
Here he is. Here he is. Hat and
Hello.
all. Hat and all. Melissa, just so that you know, earlier in the program, there is a magazine called The Louisian. It's a fairly new magazine, but we have an international poet here, John Agar, and John has written a little poem about Stephen Catlin. And it's a lovely poem, and I will try and get this. I'll send a copy to you so you
Very
can
good.
take a read. But perhaps I don't know how much you know about Stephen's background, but he ran a little sweet shop, a candy shop here for many years, and it was iconic. It was so very typically British. And my wife, being of your background, North American, used to love to go in because he had his sweets in bottles, and you could say a quarter of this and a quarter of that, and get a whole different range of sweets. But when he, the rather avaricious land barons made it impossible for him, that's when he went into politics. But not only is he just a very successful mayor that we've just had, but also, as Stuart says, is he knows where all the bodies are buried. But he also, of his own volition, looks after the little gardens, the public gardens around Lewis. And you can see him carrying flowers and a trowel and that sort of thing, and disappearing into a plot of land. And the next thing you know is it is quite beautiful. So Stephen has been given nice recognition by an international poet and in a very nice local magazine.
Melissa,
Very nice.
Stephen is a.
So Keith, just a question. So the report that I was watching prior was from a couple of years ago?
Yes, it was. And
Oh,
it,
okay.
it more or less has been proved true, I'm afraid, is that in fact much of the administration has gone to Eastbourne and is now that's where most of our administration is. There's virtually none left in Lewis.
Yeah.
So all our efforts to try and highlight how ridiculous this was came to no effect. But I think one of the things that's happening is that the cynicism with which we now treat our politicians it's coming home to roost. They have treated the electorate with great disdain, and particularly at the local level. And now we, as one lovely man from the Economist Intelligence Unit once said to me about a Southeast Asian country that had tried to buck the markets, he said, the markets rose up and spanked them. And I think that the electorate are going to rise up and spank our elected officials because they are useless, to say the least.
I mean, my question is, why did they do it? Did they do it to save costs? Because that's usually what it's about.
Well, in theory, but it's actually costing more because they. I'll give you an example. Is the other day somebody phoned to say there's a pothole outside the courthouse, and they phoned the Lewis District Council, and the chap who asked the phone said, "Oh dear, dear." He said, "Can you tell me where that is? I'm in Eastbourne." It's not
a sound music.
Add to stream. So there we are, but we don't have Melissa, and we will try again because internationally it doesn't look at all good this morning, and it's just sad because there is so much to ask about what's going on in the United States and what. I mean, thank goodness I've got Stuart with me this morning because he can talk the hind leg off a donkey, and
Yeah, and you can.
Oh, there we go. Lovely. There we go. There we go. So, Melissa, Stuart, being a man of many parts, Vietnam War included, is always very interesting to know what's going on overseas. So, give us a little breakdown of what's happened in the States in the past week.
Well, we've got this.
No, hang on.
Hang on a sec. Look, you're making me deaf with your shouting.
Never mind about that.
Look, can you actually just tone it down a little bit?
Right, come on.
A few decibels now.
What do you want to ask?
Oh, I want to ask about the midterm elections. You know what they are?
She was just about to tell you about the midterm elections.
No, but I'd like to ask.
Another fine mess you've got in Vienna.
No, right. Another fine mess. Yeah. Oh, God.
Oh, the midterm elections. Yes, they're right around the corner.
You don't know, Melissa, that Keith has been on AWOL for the past 2 weeks. Do you know what absence without leave means? He's been going up to London to actually make some money.
Yeah.
Because somebody wants him to do some training for people up there.
Filthy lucre.
Filthy lucre. So I keep telling him that, AWOL is a punishable offence. Anyway, he's back now making a nuisance of himself. Now, what I would be very interested in knowing about your take on the midterm elections, obviously, as I understand it, the Democrats are going to get a majority in the Senate, are they not? But lose the lead in the House. Is that correct?
Well, that's what the polls say. I don't really quite understand my country, but I think a lot of it is reflective of the economy. It's always a reflection of the economy, and it's also a reflection of the Biden administration. So I think people are just thinking that he's very ineffective, and I think there's some validity to that. He's not someone who gets anybody excited about anything. He's just there. And maybe after the 4 years with Trump, that's not such a bad thing. But I think people are distressed about the economy. Although, get me started on the economy. We make our own problems. Let's be quite honest with ourselves here. Who's causing inflation? Who's causing prices to rise? Who? People who are buying and buying and buying and buying and buying. You raise the prices. It's just supply and demand. We've had a supply chain issue, right? We had supply chain issues from COVID. There's pent up demand to go out and buy and be normal again. Okay. And then very low interest rates. Well, we can blame a lot of various politicians for that. But, this is what's happening. We're all complicit.
It's very
But
interesting, Melissa.
we want to find somebody else to blame.
Yeah, but Melissa, can I just interrupt you there? Because in this country, there's been when Liz Truss started the shortest prime ministership in history.
Well, you all are just a mess. I don't know what's going on.
But what the point I'm trying to make is that Rishi Sunak, when he was campaigning, said, Liz Truss wanted to reduce taxes. Now, that is crazy because it means people have more money and they spend it, and that stokes up inflation. So it's madness, right? And Rishi Sunak said all this, and people just didn't believe what he was saying. But the fact is, he was absolutely right. The only tool you've got to actually stop inflation is interest rates. And therefore, as I understand it, in America, they've put the interest rates quite high up, and that should come through. But here, the Bank of England, which is independent from the government, they've dilly-dallied a lot, but only just now are they beginning to actually put the interest rates and curb the inflation. And also
let's go back into a little bit of recent history, okay? And it's dismayed me terribly. We did some of the same things that Liz Truss did in 2017 for the Tax Act. We lowered the corporate tax rate from 35% down to 21%. Okay, this was not needed. Everything was doing fine. And that administration that we had previously kept insisting that our Federal Reserve lower interest rates to practically nothing. So, of course, it's created a huge housing bubble. Everybody's going out and buying houses, buy. Okay. Finally, the Federal Reserve woke up and decided, okay, well, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Duh. Hello. I mean, you don't understand basic psychology. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then let's go back to the Corporate Tax Act in 2017. You're lowering the corporate taxes because it's supposed to trickle down to the workers. Really? Seriously?
Yeah.
Has it ever really truly worked? No. Okay, it didn't work during
That's what they're talking about here, the trickle down. Yeah.
What do you think?
The trickle down hasn't worked here either.
Well, they don't trickle down. The wealthy don't trickle. That's why they're wealthy. Okay. So what happened was your corporations, what did they do with the money? Did they give it to the workers? No. They bought back their stock to raise their stock prices. Hello.
Yeah.
It's all about that. I mean, we need to wake up in this country. It's ridiculous. And the same thing happened with you and Liz Truss. I thought that was the most ridiculous plan. You don't need to be a rocket scientist like Rishi to understand.
Yeah, but it was a cut in. Yeah, but in this case, it wasn't corporate tax. It was the income tax. It was the general public. A penny off income tax, which a penny off income tax is an awful lot of money when you think how many people there are in Britain.
There was a corporate tax cut in that as well.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, because
you have to understand.
Yeah.
Which you have to understand with the wealthy.
Yeah.
It's not about their income. They don't care about their income. They care about their capital gain. Okay, all right.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, it's like the people who run the energy companies, don't they? They say they're investing in the new things. In fact, they're giving themselves unbelievable salaries, and also an awful fantastic dividends.
It's not the salaries. It's not the salaries.
What is it? It's the money to the shareholders as well.
It's the stock.
Yeah.
Because because the taxes on stocks are much lower than the taxes on income.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily want as much income as they want stocks.
Yeah.
Because for example, our top tax bracket is 33%. Okay, for the very wealthy, 37% or 33% depending, and the capital gains tax is only 20%. So of course they're going to want their income or their money to come from capital gains, not from a salary. See, we're thinking like salary people. That's not how they're thinking. They're thinking tax-wise.
Well, I think you're right, Melissa, because BP, for example, assumedly they invest their money in pension funds. Well, only about 5% of pension funds come from BP, but the dividends that they give to shareholders is about 7%. Okay, that's an awful lot of money to give.
Yeah.
to shareholders. And also you find that's happening with the energy suppliers now, the gas people and all that kind of thing.
Yep. No, I
Yeah,
understand.
it's
I'm
just
gonna
about, it
plug
is all
my-
sort of like, well, it's like the banking crisis of 2008. Okay, it's like
Sorry,
a bit like the yeah
I've had to put
the
on my
banking.
headphones. Can you hear me?
That's okay. Yeah, I can. Yeah, yeah. It's about like the banking crisis in 2008. Like the people that the bankers were given huge salaries while the world was going to hell, right? And the shareholders were given huge dividends. And finally, Lloyd's Bank, for example, had to be nationalised. But also the same thing is happening now with the energy companies. Like, well, now that Boris has gone, you know, the whole thing about windfall taxes and so forth have been reunited. But the thing about, like, let's take one energy company, British Gas, right, which is one of the big six cartel who dominate the gas price and therefore the people's tariffs, domestic tariffs. And it turns out that British Gas, which is one of the main suppliers, from January 1st, 2022 to June 2022, they made profit of £1.3 billion, right, in 6 months. And where did that money go? The CEO of British Gas has a salary of £2 million a year. That's the way it goes. I think what the dividend to the shareholders must be, I bet I haven't got any British Gas shares, but I imagine it's quite substantial, very substantial.
Right, and you have to also understand that the CEO is receiving huge stock options as well. So it's not-
And and bonuses,
it's not
yes.
just his salary. It's not just salary, and bonuses are quite highly taxed.
Yeah.
It's the stock,
Yeah.
it's the options, and of course they also have private alternative investments and all this other, all of these other things that I can go through and talk to you at length, but I don't want to bore you too much. But yeah, so it's a different world when you're in that stratosphere. You can't think of it the way we think of it, because they don't live in that world. They live in they live in a different world. So and a lot of it is trying to mitigate taxes. A lot of what they do, and they're very good at it.
Do you also have an energy crisis in the States like we have?
No, we're just awash with gas. We don't have those kinds of problems. We just have a overconsumption problem in this country.
Well, I know all about that. You see, the reason you've got loads of gas is because of the fracking business.
Yeah.
That's what happened. See, once upon a time, what the idea was that all your gas would go across to Europe for LNG. No, I got it the wrong way around. Once upon a time, you had gas to export. Let's put it that, oil and gas to export because of fracking. Yeah, and it used to come over here, and then it meant that we could sell it. We could put it towards our energy mix. If you see what I mean. But now, there was a bill passed in the rest of it to lift the ban on fracking in the UK. And I went down telling to people, because me and my colleague Julian really know a lot about fracking, said that it's people about fracking. It's not the geological problems that people think. It's the question of title. In the States, the person who owns the top also owns the underneath. In the UK, the Queen owns the top, which means the government, which means the local councils. And of course, in 2019, when Quadrilla had a little tremor, it wasn't an earthquake, okay? The absolute protest against it was overwhelming. It was absolutely overwhelming. That meant that Boris invoked a ban on fracking So then the old wonderful Liz Truss had a bill, and there was a majority in favour of lifting the ban, which is madness. And thank God, Rishi Sunak has lifted the ban, has reimposed the ban.
So where do you get most of your energy, your gas from?
Right, I should tell you, right? 40% comes from Norway, yeah? 30 odd percent comes from LNG from Qatar. About 6% comes from Russia. And the other 20% comes from the North Sea and on land, from North Sea and on from land, our own resources, as it were. That's fair. But how much of that is gas, I don't know. Because when they do the statistics, they said barrels of oil equivalent. So gas could be involved or gas couldn't be involved. So it's very, very difficult to know. But then people like Rishi Sunak said that we can get 50% of our gas from the North Sea. Well, we can't. You know, he's the leader of the opposition and he's got that wrong. Because all the rest of them say that, you know. We've got all this bloody gas in the North Sea.
So
well,
what's causing your crisis, Stuart? What's causing your crisis? Or is there really a crisis? We understand Germany because of German dependence on the Russian oil, but you don't seem to have that kind of dependence.
On what?
On Russian oil.
So what's causing your problem?
Let's think. Well, a problem about gas, for example, the price is going up so exponentially that the cap has to be imposed. Yeah, there is a gas cap. There is a level, right? Mm-hmm. An equity cap. What's it called? Not a cap. The equity. No, it's not called that. It's called the gas cap. No, the energy cap. Energy cap. Right? And that was actually designated twice a year, 1st of April and the 1st of October. The energy cap is designated. Now, the way what happened here was in 2021, the energy cap in October went up to 2,741. Okay? And that was deemed to believe that would be fuel poverty for the poorest people. Well, other experts, more expert than me, but also me, knew that in April, when the April came along, the cap would be put up further by 700%. No, sorry, I got it wrong. The first energy cap I mentioned was 1,941, okay? And then when it came round to April, another 700 was put on, which meant it came up to almost 2,000. And that meant a fuel poverty. But then life changed because so then when it was coming round now to October 22, apparently the cap was going to go up by another £800, which was because of the rise in the gas price and also because of Putin taking his gas off so that there was a shortage which was driving up the price. And they said that by that it would go up another £800, which was 3,500. And that was getting really way beyond fuel poverty. It was getting into destitution, however. And then all of a sudden, without even telling anybody, the regulator, Ofgem, made a change and made that energy cap will be set every 3 months. Okay, so that meant not only did it go up by £800 on October 1, 2022, in January when it went up even further to almost 500, 5,000, I think. What was it?
So,
Three,
so
Okay.
no,
Stuart,
4-2. It went up 4-2.
Yeah, I wonder
so
if the two
Stuart,
of you can draw this to a close in about 2 minutes, please, so that we can find out some more from you, Melissa. Particularly since Stuart has raised your midterm elections, because people in this country wouldn't know any more than you would understand by-elections. So it would be interesting to find out what you think is going to happen and what impact it's going to have.
Right. Just to finish off, with the gas problem, the energy problem, there are going to be protests. There are people also going to be on the streets because it's going to impoverish loads of people. Anyway, fine.
Well, let me just ask. I mean, just from a practical standpoint. So, what's your price per month for gas or for
Mine.
energy? Yes. And what about you, Keith? What is
Well,
the average?
Mine was £40 and it's now £140.
Wow.
What?
And what about you, Stuart?
But I pay for electricity each month.
£140?
Yeah.
Well, mine is very low because our demands on energy are not very high. We live in a fairly small house, and actually, I knew how to twist these people around my little finger. I mean, for example, British Gas was run by a man called Ian Conn, and I said, well, I wrote an article which said the appropriate name Conn, which started out, and he went bonkers, and he actually threatened to sue me, and I said I wouldn't do that if I were you, because I've got ice up the hole. You see, I left the Financial Times 20 years ago, staff of the Financial Times. But if you Google me, I still come up as working for the Financial Times. So I said to Mr. Conn, I said, you wouldn't like to appear on the Financial Times, Jim? He went, ah.
Okay, right. Now, Melissa, let's turn to what's happening with your elections.
Yeah.
Well, they haven't taken place yet. You know, I think because it upsets me so much what's happening in my country, sometimes I tune it out a little bit. But you know, yeah, I think that the Democrats will probably lose the House, and hopefully there'll be some gains in the Senate, so there's some kind of balance. I always like to have a balance, because when it's all on one side, you have a tendency to get some wacky legislation and wacky judicial decisions, which I know that's not supposed to be based on politics, but it is, and crazy presidential decisions. I just don't think that Biden's been incredibly effective. So a lot of that has to do with that, and people, I don't know. I don't exactly know what's in their heads, you know, what they're thinking. This country's changing. I don't know what it's changing to, but I wonder
why would you have a split? Why the Democrats start? You just explained really why the Democrats start to lose the Congress, but why do they start to gain in the Senate?
Well, I mean, I don't know that there's going to be that much of a gain. It really just sometimes it just depends on individual races.
I think there's one, and it's one of the the deep South redneck states. I can't remember which one it is. Maybe it's Georgia or something. They've actually been, and also when the last elections were coming up, I was actually talking to various people, friends of mine in the States, and they were saying that you've got to remember the demographics. In 4 years, an awful lot of young people, better educated than before, are going to be able to vote. And I think that was really one of the factors in turning out Trump. That a lot of these kids would be Democrats and well educated and so on, and they would vote.
I think Trump, as often was the case, shot himself in the foot with his ridiculous COVID response. People had had enough, and he was so crazy and wacky and just unstable, an unstable genius. I mean, it was not stable at all. And so people just got tired of it, especially
Yeah.
with COVID. There was no real leadership. He was oscillating back and forth between being a Democratic hoax and don't wear your mask and oh yeah, it's bad, or maybe it's not bad.
And then you used to have paraffin to get rid of it or something, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Used
I
to
mean,
drink.
it's ridiculous. It was
Yeah,
absurd.
was
So
it?
it was the big cities. It was the big cities in certain states that came out, and it was a lot of it were, there was a huge black demographic that came out and voted against them because we had a lot of social unrest, a lot of unrest with law enforcement. And so a lot of that all came together. And sorry if you're a Trump supporter listening, but he lost. His idea is if I keep saying it enough, I won. People will believe him, which yeah, his supporters did, and they did crazy things. They're just not thinking. They're not thinking. So,
Yeah, but also he made false promises which he couldn't keep. Like people in the Rust Belt, he told he was going to give them jobs, but they lost their jobs because of fracking and the end of the coal mines and the end of the steel things. Isn't that true?
well, there were a lot. I'm sorry, Keith.
Yeah,
There were a lot of factors that factors that go into that. But,
where does Trump stand in terms of another charge at the White House?
oh God, please. We don't need another Putin in the world. Seriously.
But
I mean,
he keeps on protesting, and commentators keep on saying he could. I mean, could he or couldn't he?
I just, I think that, for example, a Ron, what is his name, DeSantis in Florida would have a better shot at it, even though I think he's, despicable. But, I just think, how old is he going to be? How old is he going to be in 2024? We got to stop. Listen, I love old people. I'm going to be old one day, I hope. We've got to stop it with the 80-year-olds. Okay. You need some people who've got brains. Okay. I don't know where Biden is. He's too tired. Trump, I don't know what we've got there. But those are just, we need more leadership than Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Yeah. Well, will Biden run again?
I hope not.
No, but I mean, traditionally, if you've got one term, the incumbent tilts to the second. But he's got to be 80 some odd.
What are we gonna? Yeah, come on.
Well, actually, it wasn't actually.
Retire.
Melissa, wasn't the idea that he would give way to the vice president, who's a lady? But she said she doesn't seem to have had any exposure at all in the past couple of years, does she?
What is she doing? Vice presidents traditionally don't, but I don't know. I don't know where the leadership is on either party. I'm going to be honest.
What was Harry Truman's?
What?
Do you remember what Harry Truman said about that? The being a vice president is not worth a picture of a spit. And Truman was great on the epigrams, wasn't he? The buck stops here and all that kind of thing. But the thing about that lady, well, first of all, she's we can't call them black anymore. Person of darker pigmentation, and she's a woman, and that would be quite a lot of obstacles to get over in the first place. But
we need to hire people
Sorry?
for our leadership. We have to hire people for our leadership based on their qualifications.
Apparently, she's a very accomplished person. Yeah.
I don't know that she's done anything. She just seems ineffective. Both of them do. They're out to lunch on some of their legislation. It's meaningless.
But what about
it's meaningless.
Isn't there this gay guy in Dakota or somewhere, Midwest? Isn't he going to be prominent?
I'm sorry, who was it?
There's a gay guy living in Midwest somewhere. I can't think what his name is. Who's got a lot of publicity.
Well, I mean, I guess we'll see. I just don't see any great.
He's a mayor. He's a mayor of a town in the Midwest. What? Oh, I can't remember his name.
The head of our transportation secretary.
No,
I don't know. We'll have to look into that. But
But someone, I think, during the Kennedy era says that in America, some dark horse always comes to the front somehow. Somebody, you know, huh?
I hope so. I hope somebody emerges that's good. So
Okay,
I'm
well,
not, no, go ahead.
lots of speculation, Melissa. We're well into our chat with you, so can we talk now a little bit about beer, aeroplanes, and Japanese?
Really? Well, let's see. We have a cider that we have to bottle. We can't bottle it tonight because we're going to a special event I'm very excited about. It's the gala opening of our New York Philharmonic. I'm so excited. I got tickets, orchestra seats, and they're performing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. I'm so excited today. And so that's tonight. So we won't be able to bottle the cider, but we have a cider that's ready to be bottled, maybe tomorrow.
Right. Let's put everybody because even though we've talked about this many a time on this program, there are many people who dip in for the first time. Let's explain why we're talking about cider and beer and so on in the United States while we're sitting here in the heart of bitter country.
Well, my son is a home brewer, and he's made various brews, and they're getting better and better. So it's very exciting. So he's taken a stab at cider. So this is the first cider. It tastes pretty good so far. So I'm looking forward to bottling it to see what it really will taste like in the end. I think he's got another bitter coming. We're going to be ordering some beer ingredients this weekend for the bitter, which he will present in December to you and Miles Jenner over at Harvey. So it's very exciting. He's also in the future.
And you're going to bring some over at the end of next month. Is that correct?
He's going to do it. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to. I can't, in case it explodes in my suitcase. I don't want to ruin my clothes. So let him do that.
Right, let's just catch up on going faster than the speed of sound, because your son is going to eventually join the Navy flying corps and be flying super jets.
He'll find out when he begins training. He'll find out in the middle of November. So in a couple of weeks from now, he's going to find out. It's very exciting. Very exciting.
Right. Now, at one time, I was on top of the aero industry, and I've lost all contact with it, so I don't know much. What are the planes that he will fly?
Well, if with the Navy, it would be the F-18. He wants to be the, I guess they call it Strike Force, which is the fighter jets. So similar to, if anybody's ever watched Top Gun, that movie, but that was an F-14, the Tomcat, but that's no longer in service. It's the F-18. So that's what he would be flying, or that's what that's his preference. So F-35 possibly as well. F-35. So,
and
yes,
finally, he speaks Japanese, and so he's landed a plum job in the meantime with NHK, which both Stuart and I would be familiar with as the English language and key newscaster in Tokyo. So how is he doing with that?
very well. He's very valued because he just has so much knowledge, and he understands from doing some producing for Mirador how things are done, and of course is very familiar with Japanese culture, Japanese language, of course, American culture, American English. So politics. He's just and he knows New York City very well. So he's very well positioned in that job. He's doing very well.
There you are, Sandy. You've had an impact on a Japanese television station.
Really? Talking about the Japanese, do you know that Lewis Arms has been bought by a Japanese company?
Lewis Arms, our pub here,
Yeah.
one of our pubs, has been
Wow.
bought by a Japanese company.
Wow.
A lot of sake goes around the place now. Sake is very, very vicious, I tell you that.
Oh yes.
I
it is.
used to go to Japan a lot when I was in the Far East. I used to love going to Japan.
I like the
Oh,
sake.
dear.
I call it bubbly. There's a version of sake with
It's all this bowing. It's all this bowing, you know, all this bowing. I remember once when we were in going up, trying to get into a lift, and we were bowing to one another, and we were there all bloody day because the lift kept going up.
You couldn't finish off the bowing.
You know,
I tell you one last story about the Japanese journalists in Vietnam when the balloon had really gone up. You know, the actual tune of to actually go to the stations where they would be onto their helicopters and evacuated from those. I had a very good friend called Watanabe, and he came up to me and bowed and says, I said the signal to go was first few bars of Bing Crosby singing White Christmas. And the Americans, they didn't know it, decided not to take the Japanese out. And Watanabe-san came up to me and said, bowed to me and says, Dobe-san, please do something for me. First blue bars of White Christmas.
A few minutes of ending the intermittently. So you've seen a bonfire. Are there any noticeable changes that you've seen, or is it
obviously, the pandemic has affected things. It was, hasn't for 2 years. I think really it's not quite as raucous as it used to be. I mean, one stage there was 60,000 people coming here, you know, and there was all kinds of problems getting into the pubs, and you know, because they would only let the usual people in. And there were police things, and it seems to be a bit more sort of civilized now. It's you've got to understand it, all the religion behind it all, you know, about the burning of the martyrs and Guy Fawkes and so on, and the burning of the martyrs, and the in a way it dominates this town in terms of this peculiar religious feud in a sort of way. And back in the day, they were putting tar barrels down the hill, which used to burn people. But now it is a bit more civilized. It's a bit more well organized. and it's not quite sort of as so bustling, and you couldn't get on the pavement. It was like a sardines and people in. And then they started, telling people from Brighton you can't come, and the rest of it.
Yeah.
So they've sort of, the authorities have actually made it much more organised and civilised, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, it is now 10:56 on the 28th of October, 2022. I keep on saying a year that we will not forget, Stuart.
Why is that?
Well, something happened every month in it, didn't it? We had a crisis from January until October. So if we get a crisis in November and December, we've got a clean sweep, a full house.
It's very interesting that we've had 5 prime ministers in 6 years. It does show something wrong with the actually body politic here. And, it's also this thing like, why do we elect Liz Truss on the basis of what? I hope Max doesn't hear this. On the basis of 880,000 conservative weirdos. How is that? How people elect their prime ministers?
No,
and the result has been we have got a political body of second-rate people.
Yes. Well, I won't disagree with you on the second, but the first, we don't elect our prime minister. The party elects the prime minister. What we do is we elect the party.
No, but in this case, the party didn't choose. It wasn't done by Rishi Sunak, by the politicians. Now, it was by these conservative members who are, I call them backwardsmen.
Well, I mean, to me, he got it by default, didn't he? Which is even worse.
Of course he did, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for being with us this morning. It is 10:58. You are watching Mirador Television, which comes out of the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, East Sussex. We say we are local, not parochial. And so, although we cover some things that happen locally, more or less, our main attribute, if you like, is that we look at things in the world and see how they apply to our town, which then gives us a much broader appeal to viewers because we're talking about things that affect them as well. For instance, you've just heard the gas and energy crisis from the American point of view, and from Stuart, who represents on the ground here, and expertise of some considerable amount. So do tune into us. We are on the air from 8:30 each morning, each weekday morning, until 11 o'clock. If we've got somebody special, and Stuart is his specialty is a conversation with Stuart Dolby. He's got all sorts of VIPs and interesting people lined up with whom we have conversations. If in fact that means we run over a little bit, we're perfectly capable of running over, and it doesn't bother us too much. Good morning, Keith and Stuart from Gary Toynton. We are here in between 8:30 and 11, sometimes 11:30. Do join us because you'll hear the biggest load of BS that you've ever heard, but it is better BS than we're getting out of the House of Commons right now. So from Stuart Dolby and from Melissa Conti in New York, who prematurely had to leave us, unfortunately, until Monday morning, let us say toodle pip.
It's goodbye from him, and it's goodbye from him.
Okay, so here we go, and we will say goodbye, and.